There's Bill, Junior, and Nancy, and Lil Dave, and Tessie, and me.
Pause. How many people are in this family currently? Show me on your hands. Show me on your hands. How many people are in this family currently?
So one of the things I really like about this video with Kaycee and these students, as I watch this, I'm sort of captivated by the ways she breaks things down for kids, creates alternate pathways, redirects them, asks simple questions like this, seemingly simple questions like, how many members are there in this family? Just, you've got to know that. And I'm seeing different numbers of fingers up around this room. It's not an easy question with the lottery to ask how many family members there are, because they're very slow to reveal themselves, even though the story's compact. And so she uses that as in this video. Kaycee uses that simple question as a pathway to go deeper with the kids, and they feel safe going there with her because she's given them this very reasonable staircase to climb on that pathway. And I think that's repeated over and over again for this video, and that, since I'm passionate about the Common Core being for all kids, that really resonates with me when I watch this video, is how effectively she does that.
What Kaycee also shows is how you can use the Common Core even with a class who might otherwise present, your problems of management, etc. She's able to stay so close with the text, while at the same time she does things like, the show me on your hands, like she's keeping the kids moving. I can tell you that a lot of these kids might pose a management problem, but usually don't for Kaycee, because she keeps them engaged in all these various very fun and concrete ways, even while she's doing something like reading a close reading of one sentence over and over again. So it's not like the Common Core is only applicable for kids who don't propose your range of management problems. If you're using the teaching techniques you've always used, they're always applicable with the Common Core stuff.
What kind of irony is it? Is it dramatic, situational, or verbal? Discussion in your groups.
It's
what type of irony is it? 30 seconds, go.
It's situational, and she's screaming out dramatic.
It's situational because they didn't expect Mrs. Hutchinson to act like that.
Very nicely done.
I think that's a great example of the power of vocabulary when you teach it so that the kids actually know it. So irony is probably on the border of a tier 2 or a tier 3 word, but like the situational and dramatic and verbal are words that you don't see every day, and they were able to put it all together, and that's because it was drilled. And then they learned it in a different story, then they had to apply it here. So everything was brought together, and when you're doing texts to the level that Kaycee is, then you can make a connection between them, which means that you understand both better, which is something that a reliance on the text will afford you the chance to do.
There's also an important point here. A lot of these readers are low-level readers, we know, but the concepts of irony that she's introducing are pretty high-level concepts. And I've always believed, and I think the Common Core addresses this, that just because a student reads on a first grade level doesn't mean that they don't think on a ninth grade level. That those concepts need to be taught along with the skills. Because if you don't introduce those concepts, those grade level skill concepts at their thinking ability, then when are they ever going to get those? Because you're going to be skipping over those because they don't read on a ninth grade level.
And the material they can access, if left to themselves, will never yield that kind of rich harvest of opportunities like the lottery does.
As we're talking about the different levels within the classroom, what are your thoughts about, this classroom being a ninth grade level, but their reading level may be below that?
Well, they need to hear the text and read it repeatedly, which I think this lesson, if they're spending a few days on it, is pushing them back in the search for evidence. One of the techniques that Kaycee uses in this video that I love, and it's one I do a lot, is at one point Kaycee is the narrator and she has assigned to kids, and I would bet she rotates a lot, we only see a little, but she's reading quite rapidly. The kids have to keep up with her, which means they're forced to follow along with her fluent reading, and then boom, if you're the male that was speaking, then you get your spoken words, and you get the female spoken words, and however many characters there were, they all had to know where they were. And if you do that and rotate, you've got at least those 6 or 7 kids who are involved reading along, and if you do rapid fire rotation, you're building fluency in these low-level kids quite quickly and efficiently. Since the fluency research is so solid, it is following along while a fluent reader reads, or repeated reading of the same text. And both of those are in play during this lesson while Kaycee is keeping the kids tuned into all the implications of this story that she's teaching.
The other intriguing thing to look at these kids compared to kids who might be more fluent readers, and some of whom we saw today in Aiden's class, but in any situation, is that they're not only not fluent in their reading, they're not fluent in their language. It takes them a long time to express their thoughts. I don't think there's any deficiency. There is no deficiency in their thinking. There is no. It's not that they can't grasp as quickly the concept of ironic, that somehow things flip around in an odd, opposite way. It's that they can't express that. And being asked to express it at this grade level, just as in the second grade level, being asked to express difficult ideas, and then being asked to read it, as in the choral reading that Tim did, those kinds of activities not only develop fluent reading, they develop more fluent language. And that's a huge difference between kids who are proficient academically and kids who are not.
Let me ask a question about the topic of fluency, because it is something that is very rich and concentrated in the earlier grade levels. So what do you say for, the high school teachers or upper grade teachers, and as an administrator or principals, things like that, if they come in the room and see 9th graders reading aloud a text, is that acceptable?
What I would say to a principal or to teachers or to students themselves would all be the same thing. First of all, it has to be named and talked about, and kids have to understand what fluency is. I think as a teacher, I always have that conversation when I'm teaching high school kids especially, who have some of these struggles and are disfluent and know it. I name it for them and I explain it to them. And then one of the really powerful techniques that we've done is you can take a single paragraph. This takes 10 minutes. Read it out loud, kids following, do all those same exercises with a single paragraph, and then at the end ask a couple kids to volunteer to read it. They're going to read it well after 10 minutes. So you can ask the class, did you all become smarter in 10 minutes because they think it's an intelligence problem? Or is it a fluency problem? And do you see how quickly it can be fixed? I think if every teacher could do that early in the year and remind kids of it, and then the kids would follow along. They would understand why. And this is not a hard problem to fix. That's the good news about fluency. The bad news is if we don't address it and principals don't learn to actually push for it instead of wonder why it's going on, the Common Core is going to face a singular challenge in its successful implementation just because of the fluency barriers. It has to be addressed. It's really important.